primary focus of all of our communications and start treating people as individuals, neighbors, and friends. As a gesture of this new focus, I will begin working to provide free educational seminars to the public, which will give people the proper tools necessary to not only participate in the state governmental process, but also interact with the different committees and legislators that are at the Capitol to represent us. I look forward to the future and hope that we can all begin to work together to create better solutions for all the people in our community.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, friends and foes, and anybody else that's actually out there listening to us at this point. Hope you listen through our PSAs. We like to play those because we understand that whether we agree with people or not, there's a lot of information out there that people should have access to, and we want to make sure we get that out there. So, welcome to the second hour of the show. This evening, we have special guest from the Satanic Temple Utah chapter, Chalice Blythe. And she's going to be here tonight talking about their organization and the new Utah After School Satan Club, which, by the way, I think is just extremely awesome because for many different reasons. But we'll go ahead and welcome you to the show. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So you guys have just launched, like recently, the After School Satan Club in Utah. And the only other two states that have been successful in launching so far, I think, is Portland, or Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. We had Finn and Lilith on the show a couple weeks ago. So how does Utah, okay, you don't normally think of the Satanic Temple or anything other than Mormons in Utah. So how is that working out for your organization in Utah?
It's really interesting. I get that a lot because we do have a very strong LDS base here. But I guess the nice thing about having a religiously dominated state is that all the laws and everything they have in place actually benefits religious organizations. So really, getting our After School Satan Club, I mean, it did take a long time. We announced back in July or late July, early August of last year to, right before the school year started. And there was a lot of things that we had to get together prior to meeting all the requirements for our rental agreement. But for the most part, it really wasn't that difficult. They were very clear on the laws of which allowed us to participate, and they had experience with having the Good News clubs. I think they have 13 different clubs going on right now for this school year. So they're very familiar with the process. They've let people in, and they knew that by law they were required to let us in. So it's we do get a lot of pushback, and there's a lot of support via internet, but maybe not so much the showing up part because of a lot of familial ties, a lot of community issues there. But as far as us getting in there, we didn't get pushback as far as the district went, the district and the school.
Now, have you actually had the Westboro Baptist Church protest you yet? Because that would be epic. I mean, honestly.
I'm hoping at some point they'll, when I die, they'll protest my funeral, because that way I'll know I've done something right.
I think a lot of us are having that same dream, actually. Now, when we talked to Lilith and Finn a couple of weeks ago, they were met with a lot of actual protests. Have you had some of that too, where you've had people showing up protesting and actually physically being there to try to discourage people from showing up?
No. have not had any physical protesters. We've had some negativity online and a few messages here and there, but for the most part, people of the LDS faith, I mean, we're talking our predominant, you'd think they'd be the ones protesting us, but they're very hands-off. They would prefer to just pray for us instead of show up and try to incite any kind of hysteria or violence or anything like that. So, but as far as the other, the other groups that would have an issue with us, nobody bothered showing up. Nobody protested us, and it went by. Our very first time in the school, it was actually an open house. Our very first real class is going to be next month on the 8th, but our open house was, we showed up, people were there to kind of make sure that everything went okay. We spoke to, superintendent, community relations person. We even had a nice chat with the, I'm going to say director, but that's not it, the school principal. Anyway, we were greeted very kindly and respectfully, and there were no issues. So,
well, that's amazing too, because I mean, when you look at Washington and Oregon, they're both very liberal states, and yet they've had huge amounts of protests. And Utah, being a very conservative state, has nothing, and that's just weird to me.
Well, that makes me wonder if they're, and I don't want to sound shitty or condescending, but if they're actually being kind of dismissive and not taking TST completely seriously, like, oh, this is just going to blow over, it's just some stupid bullshit, or if they're just actually the point to where, you know what, we don't agree with it, but you know what, if they have a different thing, let them do it.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with the LDS community, I mean, I didn't grow up in it. My family is not LDS, but I'm completely surrounded by it. And the thing about the Mormon culture is that they very much understand on some level what it's like to be ostracized. They understand what it's like to have their leader murdered for their beliefs. They're still considered not real Christians, and so they deal with that a lot. So I think what I've experienced is simply just an acknowledgement that they don't agree with it, and they think it's not right, but they're not going to, one, break the law or try to skirt it to deter us, or be they're very passive aggressive. So I'm sure there's a lot of concern about us being there, and clearly they don't agree, but you'll find that people of the Mormon faith are just very, they just want to do their own thing, and since they are the ostracized people even within the Christian community, it's I'm sure on some level they can kind of understand that treating people like that is not, it's just a waste of time. You do you, we do us, and it's fine. So that's been my experience.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, thank you for that, because I wouldn't have actually even thought about it that way.
Well, let's think about it another way too. Is that the Mormons, and I've got a Mormon Bible around here somewhere.
It's right there.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have Bibles from a whole bunch of different faiths because I study this kind of stuff, because I have the belief that in order to understand a people, you need to understand what they believe. So I have a whole bunch of religious books on the bookshelf here. Now, do you think, or at least it's kind of a theory at this point for me, that maybe because of the fact that the Mormon Church doesn't really prescribe to the Old Testament, where it talks about Satan and this, that, and the other, that they don't have the Satan stigma that Christians do, that look at that and, oh yeah, here it is, the Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus Christ. How nice. But do you think that maybe that might be part of the reason why you're not getting as much flack as Washington and Oregon, is because of the fact that they don't kind of prescribe to the Old Testament in the Mormon faith?
Well, It's hard for me to say because again, I didn't grow up LDS, and so as far as their doctrine or how they practice their day to day, I'm not terribly familiar. But I would say that because there is a heavier concentration on perhaps like the New Testament as opposed to the Old Testament that has a lot to do with it. Clearly there's a lot about the LDS doctrine that we don't agree with. I mean, we just recently had the issue of the children of gay couples or gay parents are not allowed to be baptized, and they're not recognized by the church until they turn 18, and they completely denounce their family members or their parents. So they do have their issues. They had Prop 8. But I think as far as how Satanists are treated, again, I think they're incredibly passive aggressive, and my theory is that because they themselves, I guess, in a way, were Satanized, that they're fairly new. I mean, they're a newer religion. I mean, the only thing that's come up that's prominent ever since then was probably Scientology. In Church of Satan, but they remember enough how that kind of treatment, how that being ostracized feels. So perhaps in a way, it's just empathizing with that. It's hard for me to know. But yeah, probably. I mean, that sounds like it would be a valid reason.
Now, when you talk about the after school Satan's Club, we know that the Good News Club is very Christian oriented. What kind of curriculum? I just cannot say that word.
Curriculum.
Mm-hmm. What kind of curriculum are you guys going to have for your students that come in and actually participate?
We are a group of Satanists who are offering this after-school program for kids, and we are trying to have a program that kind of complements and contrasts the pre-existing religious groups that are already in the schools. But we're not going to offer any materials or lectures about Satanism. Instead, we want to focus on free inquiry and rationalism. Try to bolster scientific understandings of the natural world, and really try to nurture a child's already basic understanding and ability to be curious about the world around them. So we just use a lot of fun, cool ways in which to get that across. So use games, art projects, experiments and stuff like that really talk about these core concepts. And all of our curriculum was put together by people who have like doctorates in teaching and stuff. So these are put together by people who they know a lot about education, and knowing that these are our core values, these are the things that we think are beneficial for children. They put together lesson plans for us to do so.
Well, that's actually really cool. I mean, I think that nowadays, especially, the idea of teaching kids, and even, well, actually, we should probably teach some adults too about critical thinking. How to actually, instead of following the norm, to actually think and actually come up with their own ideas. My mom was in the Navy forever, and she was very independent when I was growing up. So we read a lot. I mean, my family is a bunch of bookworms. We're a bunch of knowledge nuts. We believe in fact, and we like to have information. And one of the things that I like about the idea of the After School Satan Club is that we can actually get kids now who may be sucked into the Xbox or sucked into the Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that other stuff that doesn't require a lot of critical thinking, to make them understand or to within themselves understand themselves that doesn't kind of dictate reality, and that it may encourage critical thinking in our younger folks, which will benefit, when I'm old, I'm already old, but when I'm older and having to rely on the millennials and the generations after the millennials to make sure that I don't turn to dust, that they'll actually be more they'll be more concerned about fact and critical thinking in their fellow men and women